All right, it's from Samuel chapter 3, verses 1 to 20. Now the boy Samuel was ministering to the Lord under Eli. The word of the Lord was rare in those days. Visions were not widespread. At that time Eli, whose eyesight had begun to grow dim so that he could not see, was lying down in his room. The lamp of God had not yet gone out. And Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called, Samuel, Samuel. And he said, Here I am, and ran to Eli, and said, Here I am, you called for me. But he said, I did not call. Lie down again. So he went and lay down. The Lord again called Samuel. Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. But he said, I did not call, my son. Lie down again. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. The Lord called Samuel again a third time. And he got up and went to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. Then Eli perceived that the Lord was calling the boy. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, Go, lie down, and if he calls you, you shall say, Speak. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Now the Lord came and stood there, calling as before, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel said, Speak, for your servant is listening. Then the Lord said to Samuel, See, I am about to do something in Israel that will make both ears of anyone who hears it tingle. On that day I will fulfill against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house, from beginning to end. For I have told them that I am about to punish his house forever for the iniquity that he knew, because his sons were blaspheming God, and he did not restrain them. Therefore I swear to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be expiated by sacrifice or offering forever. Samuel lay there until morning. Then he opened the doors of the house of the Lord. Samuel was afraid to tell the vision to Eli. But Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son, here I am. Eli said, What was it that he told you? Do not hide it from me. May God do so to you and more if you hide anything from me of all that he said to you. So Samuel told him everything and hid nothing from him. Then he said, It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him. As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and let none of his words fall to the ground. And all of Israel from Dan to Beersheba knew that Samuel was a trustworthy prophet of the Lord. There's a lot in it, a lot of good stuff. Now the Bible verse for today is from the Old Testament book of Samuel, and Samuel was actually a pretty big figure in the Old Testament. He anointed the first two kings of Israel, Saul and David, that's nice on your resume, right? He anointed the first two kings. So he's in pretty good company. And the Bible verse that we're talking about today speaks about a very important time in the life of Samuel, where we see that God begins to speak to him. We literally talk to him. This is a cool event because he goes from a place of not hearing God, not really knowing God, that God actually speaks to him, and he says, Speak. Your servant is listening. And that's a big change for anybody to go through. Now, we believe Samuel was probably about 12 years old at the time when this happened. And the time period was probably about 1090 BC. And the story begins some very cool things. It starts off as saying that Samuel was ministering to the Lord under Eli. So Eli was actually the high priest, and Samuel was like his assistant. He would kind of go do anything that they needed. He'd open the doors, kind of thing. And he was almost in the sense of priest in training as well. Now, next it says, the word of the Lord was rare in those days. I've seen other texts use the word precious instead of rare, but both would be probably accurate, because what it means is that God rarely spoke. But when he did, it was precious. It was important. And since God didn't speak much, anything he said, we needed to pay attention to. It was a big deal. So Eli was the high priest and the judge at the time. And as you read it, you see how Eli's time appears to start to be passing. And Samuel is up and coming. He's now starting his relationship. It's a big transition period. And this is the setup, the scene as this unfolds. Eli is now very old, and his vision is quite poor. And since he's the high priest, they call them the Kohen Gadol. That means high priest in Hebrew. And so if you ever know of someone with the last name of Cohen, They didn't assume that name. Cohen, it means they probably had someone in their family line way back that was part of the priestly class, which is kind of cool. So the high priest, he slept within the temple in a chamber not far from where the Ark of the Covenant was. Remember the Ark of the Covenant? Or if he's nothing else, Raiders of the Lost Ark? It was there. How cool! That's where it is. And the high priest would sleep right over there. And it says it's dark and it's late, and the lamp of God had not gone out. So what that means is, in their temple at night, the sun would go down, they would light a certain set of candles they call the lamp of God, and they would give them just enough oil to burn through the night. So in the morning, as the sun would come up, those lamps would go out. So it says the lamps of God had not gone out yet. So that's saying it's probably really late in the morning, maybe 4-ish, 5 a.m. The sun's not ready up yet. This is when this is going on. Now, everyone is asleep, and that includes Samuel and Eli. And this is cool because the nation of Israel God had not been speaking to them for some time. And this includes Eli, the high priest. Until they wait. They wait. One night, while they're all sleeping, for the first time in a while, God speaks to a 12-year-old boy. He speaks to a boy who doesn't really realize that it's even God. God says to the young man, he says, Samuel, Samuel. I looked online and I tried to see if I could get Morgan Freeman to do that for me. It's too expensive, so you just have to pretend it's him. He says, Samuel, Samuel, says his name twice. Samuel pops up, he looks around, he doesn't see anybody. He figures it must be Eli, so he runs into Eli's room and he says, here I am, you called for me. And Eli wakes up and says, I didn't call for you. Go back to sleep, go lay down again. So Samuel does. A little time passes, and Samuel hears the same thing. Samuel, Samuel. He gets up, runs into Eli's room, and says, I'm here, you're calling for me. Samuel says, I didn't call you. Go back to bed. So he goes back to bed. And the next verse in our Bible verse says this. Let's go to our first slide. It says, now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. This means Samuel, he's a good kid. He was working in the temple, following orders, being a good boy. But he wasn't doing anything out of faith yet. He didn't know God. Now, each one of us in our faith walk, at some point, we were just simply taken to church by our parents or grandparents. You just went. That's what you did. Some of the kids here, they're here because they're brought here. They don't yet know God. They don't yet come here out of faith. I was there too. I remember when I was a kid, or sometimes I did, when I go to church, are you kidding? You had to go. That's what you did. But eventually, as my faith grew, I liked going to church. And I started to learn stuff. This is that period in Samuel's life where he's going from this is a job where he's supposed to be here till now, God's going to start to talk to him. This is a great time. This is a big step. Now, so Samuel goes and he lays back down, and he hears a third time, a voice that says, Samuel, Samuel. He gets up and he runs into Eli's room. He says, you called me, I'm here. Eli started to get a little suspicious, because either Samuel is hearing problems, he just can't sleep and he's trying to, or something bigger is going on here. Maybe God is speaking to the boy. I mean, after all, they're in the temple, the Ark of the Covenant's right there. This is kind of a hot spot. There's really good Wi-Fi in this place. So Eli says, okay, go back and lay down. But this time, if you hear someone say your name, I want you to say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. Got it? You need to write it down? It's okay, you don't need it down. So he goes back and he lays down. He's laying there for a while. Now, what's interesting is Samuel did teach him the first big thing that's important when you communicate with God. Let's go to our next slide. Just simply be still and listen. In our lives, everything's really busy, phones and all kind of stuff. There are times, in order to talk to God, you just need to be quiet and not do anything. Now, it sounds funny, but think of the scenario. God is there. Samuel's here. He says, hey, Samuel. The kid gets up. Runs right past him. Comes back. Samuel. Runs right past him. Samuel. Runs right past him. What am I, chopped liver? So what did Eli tell Samuel to do? Stay right there. Just stay there. Say, speak. I'm here. I'm listening. Because Samuel's like, I don't know. What I need to know. Got to figure out what's going on. So the point is, when you start to communicate with God, when you pray, first off, just stay where you're at. Turn down the TV and say, Lord, speak. I'm here. That's a lesson specifically I need to learn. I need to do better at. Because as pastor, people are constantly, Ryan, can you pray for this person? Can you pray for this person? And this guy, I think his name's Steve, he's a friend of my friend, but and that's great, I would be happy to. But in our prayer lives, we also have stuff going on, your house, your job. So sometimes when you sit down to pray, you got a to-do list that's this long, right? You go through it. So this is what it's like for me sometimes. Okay, God, I need help with family, friends, Aunt Sue, Uncle Bob, that lady in the office, mortgage, the neighbor Steve, you got a job, here, Debbie, Mike, Alan, Christine, church, youth group, choir, the car would be great. Betty's got that thing on her leg, help me get that raise. The blood pressure, the kids got to go to good grades, go to good college, because scholarships are expensive. And this is my mind, and I'm like, we need all this. So pretty much 5 minutes into it, and what did I just do? I just unloaded all this stuff. But communication with God is a two-way street. So I say, if you're going to pray for 2 minutes, 1 minute of it is you talking, the other minute is you not talking. If it's 5 minutes, 2.5 you talk, 2.5 you do not. And again, we need to give God specifically time to talk to us. Because those times when I do pray like that, what if God's going, wait, hold on, stop. He'll let us go. He'll let us go and he watches the show for a little bit. Finally I get to it. What if, when you pray, you start off with don't say anything. Nothing. You spend a few minutes, Lord, I'm here. Talk to me. What would you like me to know? You know why God was speaking to Samuel at night? Why he sometimes speaks to people at night when they sleep? It's the most quiet time. He's got a captive audience, I like to say. Because I'm driving on the road or I'm at work, there's all kinds of stuff going on. I got my mind going. And sometimes my wife will call me and say, okay, right on your way home, why don't you get bread, milk, and I'll do some yoga. To be honest with you, I don't always remember exactly what she told me. So what God's going to tell me, what if sometimes the best time to talk to you is when you're asleep? It's quiet, nothing else going on. And you're going to remember it later. So that's what he was doing. The beauty of being still and quiet, which is what Eli and Samuel do, is that he gave God a chance to talk. So what I would recommend is tonight, when you go home, when you pray, if you do this for me, go to a quiet room. There's a TV, turn it off. Or if there's a bunch of stuff going on in one room, go to where it's quiet. And just sit quietly for 2 minutes. Just say, Lord, I'm here. I'm listening. And he may tell you something. You may be surprised at what he tells you. It may be silence. But the beautiful thing is that you're opening up a channel. You're saying to God, I'm here, I'm listening. Because his word should be precious to you as well. Now with Samuel, when he goes back to lay down this last time, he's prepared. He's got his little list, what he's supposed to say. And then let's go to our next Bible verse. This is what it says. Now the Lord came and stood there, calling us before, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel said, speak. Your servant is listening. I'm listening. And that's awesome because the Lord actually came and stood there. Stood right there. And many Christian scholars believe that was probably Jesus, because Jesus was always on this earth the physical representation of God. He's our connection to God the Father. So Samuel's there and he says, speak. I'm here. And then he was quiet. And he waited for God to speak. So I say, if you want to hear God, you certainly can. But you need to do the same. You have to be open to hearing him. And you have to give him a chance to speak to you. The way I describe it when I talk about it with friends or somebody at work is, you can, but the preferred time of saying a prayer is not while you're driving down the street, on the way to Publix. this. Okay, God, I'm ready. Tell me if you want to hear anything. Well, I got the public. He didn't say anything. So that happens, right? You send someone a text, you're like, why didn't he text back? Did he not get it? Same thing with God. Give him a chance. Repeatedly. Just make it part of what you do. So then God speaks to Samuel. Now again, imagine this. Sometimes you read this stuff and you think, wow, that sounds good. You're a 12-year-old boy. You're in the temple. The ark is right there. And the high priest is there too. And this is what God tells you about the high priest. It says, see, next slide. I'm about to do something in Israel that will make both ears of anyone who hears it tingle. On that day I will fulfill against Eli all I have spoken concerning his house, from beginning to end. For I have told him that I'm about to punish his house forever. Oh. Samuel is going to have to give some big news to who? The high priest, his wrongs. For the iniquity that he knew because his sons were blaspheming God and he did not restrain them. Therefore I swear to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be expiated by sacrifice or offering forever. It's a fancy word for saying there's no forgiveness there. He's done. He can't pray this away. There's no sacrifice. This is what's happening. And now guess who gets to tell Eli? Samuel. How would that be for your first prayer? Pretty heavy stuff. But the morning comes, Eli, he comes to Samuel. He says, tell me what he said. And don't leave anything out. So Samuel tells him everything. And this is an important thing to remember when we pray, when you pray, is that God will tell you all kinds of things. More than likely, he's going to tell you he wants you to do something, put something on your heart. It may not be easy, it may not be something you necessarily want to do. But he does do that. Some of the biggest examples is there someone in your life that you need to forget? Forgive. Someone in your past that you need to forgive. It's not in the Bible to forget. Is there someone in your past? Has something happened? Do you share of your wealth? Do you give 10% to those in need? Do you put God first in your life? Or just kind of squeeze him in when it's convenient for you? God will speak to you with what he wants. What's best for you. And Jesus actually said, my sheep, they know me. They hear my voice. And they follow me. Because we can claim we're Christian all we want. This third person, with Heber, and then have our earmuffs on, so we don't hear anything back. God says, I want you to do this, I want you to do this. No, I'm not doing that, not doing that, not doing that. He's not doing that. No. When I was, before I became a pastor, I felt like God wanted me to do something. I knew it. I just didn't know what it was. One day I was watching, I think it was the History Channel, and they were doing a segment on guys that are in prison, convicts and things like that. And they asked about their experiences and what they thought about the outside world. And one guy said, this, and I'm not going to get this exact, I was getting close. All these Christians, I'm in here locked up 24 hours a day. No one comes to see me or talk to me about this God. And it was like I got kicked in the chest. He was exactly right. How much of a Christian am I, or are we, if we don't do something? So then here I walked away from that thinking, I got to really work to put on some blinders and pretend I didn't hear that, or I need to do something. And I don't know how to do that. I don't like talking in front of people. I've never done a Bible study before. So I knew a friend who knew the chaplain at the Indian River County Jail, and I got a hold of him, and I told him, I said, I think I need to do this. I don't know how. Can you help me? He goes, yeah, come on in. And the first couple times were terrible. I bombed. But eventually, it started to work. And I tell you, it was scary. I've never been arrested before. It was in a room smaller than this, with about 40 guys, and nothing but solid concrete and stainless steel. And they locked that door behind it. Boom. We'll be back in an hour. As tough as I look, I wouldn't have lasted a second. Every one of those guys could have broke me in half. But they're good guys. They've been through a lot. But we did. We had a good conversation. It was worth it. But it took a lot of faith and courage and trusting. And when I said, God, what do you want me to do? He told me. Then it's simply a question of, are you going to do it? And that's exactly true for every one of you. You have every right to come here and go to church all the time. Every Sunday. And I'll do my best to tell you what the Bible says. But your part is to say, God, what do you want from me? What would you like me to do? Big, small, anything? You know, when I felt the call to go to seminary, I didn't do anything with it right away. You know why? I didn't want to be called to go to Africa or something like that. I had 2 little kids. I did not want to pull them up and go live in... This is absolutely true. I didn't want to go live in some hut, not have air conditioning. I didn't do anything for a while. And I thought, how selfish am I? How selfish am I? So I eventually got to the point when I said, you know what? I know what you want me to do, and I'll do it. And wherever you want me to go, I will go. Because if that's who you want me to go, it's for a reason, and whatever happens, it will be okay. And I would rather do something like that for the right reasons than try to run and pretend like I don't know it. The rest of my life is going to be awful wrong, and you pretend like I don't know it. So that's what got me here. The reason I say that is that's what prayer is about. And sometimes you're going to answer me good, sometimes you're going to be like me, and every once in a while you're like, pretend I didn't hear that, because it's uncomfortable. But that's what faith is. That's what God calls us to be different, to be more than we are. Now, in the case of Eli with his 2 sons, he was the high priest, his sons were priests too. They were named Hophni and Phinehas. They were awful. The Bible says they blasphemed against God. There's not a great definition in the Bible of what blaspheming is, but it's basically being anti-God. Making fun of his name, taking everything about him for granted, using it from your personal purpose. It's about as bad as you can get, and that's what they did. And their own dad was the high priest, and he did nothing to stop it. Nothing. So eventually God removed them all from the priesthood, permanently, their family included. This was the message that Samuel had to give to Eli. I'll tell you a little bit more about Phinehas and Hophni. They eventually went to battle against a group of people called the Philistines. And they're in there quite a bit in the Old Testament. And one time they went to battle, and it was not a good idea, and they started to lose. So as they're out on the battlefield, they thought, you know what? We have the Ark of the Covenant. If we take that into battle with us, no way God's going to let anything happen to it. We're totally going to win. So they do that. And guess what happens? The Philistines destroy them, and the Philistines take the Ark of the Covenant. It's captured and taken from Israel. So it's a sad story in a way, that part of it. But Samuel is actually called, and his faith grows. The story of Samuel for us is awesome because it can teach us so much. That we can totally hear God. He does speak to us. And I'll be honest, I'll ask you a question. Are all of you here because somebody forced you to be here? No, hopefully you're here because you choose to be. You wanted to be here. So now it's a question of what does God want from us? What does he want from you? And God calls us to change, to be part of this world. And God, he'll speak to you in many different ways. And I don't know exactly how it'll be for you. I can tell you what it feels like for me. When God wants me to go somewhere, it almost feels like there's something connected, and like if he wants me to turn right, I need to turn right. It's nice and smooth and it's easy. If I want to try to turn left, it's like I'm trying to go off the track. It physically feels uncomfortable. It doesn't, and it feels like something's heavy on me. And another way to describe it is almost be like if, when my kids were little and they're learning how to ride their bike, and they wrecked and their knee is all skinned up and they're sitting there crying. It'd be like if I saw that and then I walked away. How would that feel in your heart? That's what it feels like to me. And God says, I want you to turn right. I want you to go this way. And I try to turn left and say, I don't really want to do that. I don't know how else to describe it. So some people he actually speaks to them. Some people he just kind of puts their finger on and says, this is how I want you to do that. Sometimes he doesn't do anything. He says, you know this stuff. You know what you're supposed to do, now go. Sometimes you do it, you're going to hit a home run. Sometimes not. What you're doing. Now, Jesus himself, he would frequently go off into the wilderness to pray. That's great advice. Not only when Eli told it to Samuel, Jesus did it. Because when Jesus walked around, many times it'd be like the Beatles. There's always a crowd following around. But it's true. It's a good representation. He was. There's crowds following him everywhere he went. So sometimes to pray, what would he do? He'd go somewhere quiet, into the mountains, into the wilderness, and he'd stay there for a while. And if Jesus did that, it was good for him. So the same for us. So tonight, this is your assignment. And I have no way of knowing. I'm not going to ask you next week if you did it, but do this. I want you to pray. Go somewhere quiet. There's no noise. And just sit and say, Lord, I'm here. I'm your servant. I'm listening. And then don't say anything. I would highly recommend you do that periodically, regularly. If you have something to say it. Something on your heart. But then stop and give God a chance to talk right back to you. I think you'll be surprised. I think it'll warm your heart when he does. For those of you who are married, a spouse, if you've never prayed together, you should. I do marital counseling, and I tell them, listen, in your marriage, you're going to be sharing everything. Checkbooks, cars, children, your body. Share your prayers. One of the few things that will truly bring you together like nothing else is if you two pray together. One hand on top of the other, and pray about what's on your heart. And then the other person does the same. And then you're quiet. I read once about Mother Teresa. And a reporter went up and asked her, said, well, how is it that you pray? What do you do? That's a decent question, right? It's like one of the poets. What's your secret? What do you do? And she said, well, mostly I listen. Oh, not bad. The reporter says, well, what does God say? What does he do? She says, well, mostly he listens. And the reporter says, what? And she says, well, if you don't understand, it does means you're not either not praying or you're not praying correctly. Slow down and pray. And give God a good chance to pray, to talk back to him. Mostly just listen. And when you're in tune with God, when your hearts are together, you can feel it. Sometimes you don't have to say anything. You just simply know the right thing to do. And that's what she was referring to, and it's a beautiful message. So it's my prayer that each one of you will grow in your faith, but mostly through your prayer life. That you pray well, not just with your to-do list for God, but what does God want from you? And it's very deliberate. It's on purpose. It will change your life.